Back once again for the renegade master. 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 Back once again for the renegade master.
Hello my renegades and welcome back, and we are back to Love Island All Stars episode 25. All I can say is that episode was absolute carnage. It was diabolical how these people can look you in your face and smile and be bros and be pals and be gals, and then literally stick a 9-inch sword in your back as soon as you turned. Anyway, before we get into this episode, as I always ask, please hit that subscribe button, please hit that notification button so you know I'm on and doing videos. And let's get into this episode. So basically it starts off with the nighttime shenanigans. Chris pulls Callum for a chat and basically wants to have a chat with Callum to literally lay out, you know what, if you want to get to know her, because he doesn't want to stop her from getting to know anybody that she needs to get to know. But it is kind of crap for Chris. But even though he's saying this to Callum and Callum's taking it on board, I don't think Callum's really interested in Joanna at all. I really don't think he's that interested in Joanna. But Callum is a start as you mean to go one type of guy, so he was sharing exactly the conversation that he'd had with Joanna at the end of the day. So all I'm saying is Joanna's full of shit. Joanna is full of shit, man, and she is doing the proverbial BS tour. At the end of the day, there's no one in there that takes her fancy, and the only person she could kind of latch onto was Callum at the end of the day, because he was single and ready to mingle at that point. And I don't think Joanna wanted to do the dirty on Arabella. Georgia H and Anton look like they're getting on and doing their thing. Toby and Georgia S are just in it, solid with each other. And then you got Josh and Sophie, who are solid with each other at the moment. And you've got Casey, who's just paired off with Eve, and I don't think Joanna's really interested in Casey. So the only other personable option she had was Callum. And I think Callum's knows this. He ain't stupid. He ain't stupid, and he ain't shy coming forward either. I wish his bloody camera would stay still. Every time I move it, it keeps on fucking tilting the other way. It's doing my absolute head in. So basically, I think Chris moved too fast. Moved way too fast with Joanna. He needed time to see if Joanna got him, basically. Because this girl is saying she had a problem with his speech, but then couldn't say which part of the problem she had with his speech. First, she says to the girls it was a sarcastic speech. Then to Chris's face, she said it wasn't sarcastic, and Chris was saying no. And then when Chris asked the boy point blank, like I said in my previous episode, well, which part, she couldn't tell, because she's literally finding any excuse in which to dump on Chris, any excuse to make her feel better in moving away from Chris. You see Joanna on the daybeds with Georgia H and with Arabella, and they're just watching Chris having this chat with Callum. They're trying to keep quiet as well so they can overhear the chat stuff, overhear bits and pieces, because Georgia H does tell Joanna that Chris is basically giving you the green light, you and Callum the green light at the end of the day. But as you notice throughout this episode, Callum ain't the one pulling Joanna for chats, and Joanna started to notice it, especially in the daytime when she was saying about, if he doesn't pull me for chats, then I kind of have my answer. He's not really in it. Callum ain't in it. He really isn't. He just don't want to hurt your feelings at the end of the day. Callum is actually fixed himself onto Jess, and they shared a kiss in the bed, in which he does tell Joanna that they shared a kiss, because Joanna was getting all het up. But again, the mark of a man who says what he means and starts as he means to go on. That's what Callum wanted from Georgia S, but didn't get that in return. But this is how Callum carries himself. Yeah. I have to give props to my guy. Have to give props to Callum, you know. Have to. You see that there? Have to give props to Callum. Anton and Georgia H get picked to go in the hideaway. Nothing to really write home about there, because I've already said Georgia H don't want Anton. Georgia H does not want Anton, and she will flip that shit as quick as she makes the announcement that she wants to be exclusive with this man. She don't want him. And if anything, the shit that happened in this episode coming to the end tells you she don't want this man, because she literally threw that boy down the Swanee. She threw Anton down the Swanee. I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but I will get there. But she raw threw him down the Swanee. And Anton actually then realised what the fuck she did. Yeah. And then also, when you do watch it back, he moves away from her. But we'll get to that part, like completely get to that part. But Callum and Joanna do have a chat, because Callum wants to know exactly what Joanna has said to Chris in that sense when they were talking about like separating from each other and her going to get to know Callum. So basically Joanna's telling Callum how she apologized to Chris, and basically she turns around and says that he understands that, you know, she wants to see where she forms a connection with and not put her all in a basket and yada yada yada, you know, the whole spiel. But that was a clip version of events, because Joanna, as I said, went on her bullshit tour. That's all she did. She left Chris in the dark until the last moment, and Chris already knew it was coming at the end of the day. She did that, as I said before, because she wanted confirmation that Callum liked her and wanted to get to know her equally as well. So over night time, Chris makes me laugh, because Chris literally, the girl got into the bed, then looked, Chris had made a fort out of pillows so she couldn't touch him in any way, shape or form once she got in the bed with him. I thought that was petty as fuck, but it was funny. Basically, when it comes to daytime, Callum is talking to some of the lads, and Tom is basically saying, oh, he's got the best of both worlds, and Callum just says he doesn't feel like he's got the best of both worlds, and he doesn't feel like he's in a privileged position at the end of the day. And I'm just like, Callum just really don't seem to be feeling it at all. And I don't know whether it was the Georgia S situation that hit him quite hard, where he's not that outgoing person that he was. Yes, he can be really laid back, but he's also a little bit outgoing with his laid backness. This time he just doesn't look bothered or hyped in the slightest. I think he's taking each day as it goes, and he'll see how these girls behave before he decides, yeah, I'm going to take it a step further, or I want to progress even further with them, to be honest with you. Because I don't think he wants to get caught the way in which he did with Georgia S, or be side blinded again. And that's how his behaviour is coming across to me. But this man is honest to a motherfucking fault, like proper honesty. He even took Jess to the side and sat down and had those conversations with her in regards to Joanna, her coming to him, she wanted to get to know him, he doesn't mind getting to know her, and Jess was reasonable. She said, at the end of the day, I've just come in here. I haven't got the right to say, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that at the end of the day, because we are not in that type of relationship. We ourselves are just getting to know each other again. And he is more or less, as you noticed through the episode, pulling Jess for more chats than he is Joanna. Well, he ain't even pulled Joanna for a chat, to be fair. He hasn't at all. It's Joanna doing all the running and doing all the work, because Callum ain't interested in that. I think he's more interested in Jess than he is in Joanna, to be fair. Joanna and Arabella having a chat, and it's gone around the villa that Jess and Callum shared a kiss in bed. So it's going around the villa. Joanna knows about it, and Arabella is basically wanting to be Joanna's wing person, and she's telling Joanna that time is of the essence. At the end of the day, she's got to literally put herself forward if she wants this man. So basically, they're going to play Tweedledee and Tweedledum when it comes to Callum, and try and put Joanna in spaces with Callum and try and take those spaces away from Jess. You see, when you have to meddle and make spaces for yourself where spaces haven't been open to you naturally, it ain't going to work out for you. It really is not going to work out for you. And I think the more that you hound Callum, the more he's going to get switched off by you, to be fair. So then the text comes in, and it's All Stars couple game, and I knew straight away this will not end well. And when they all came out after the night to get him ready, it was like lambs being led to the motherfucking slaughter. Let me tell you, they did not look happy about this game at all. They tried to pump themselves up, but they did not look happy. So basically, Georgia S and Toby were the hosts, so they had to ask these questions, And each of the couples had to write a couple's name down, who they believed it related to and their reasons why. Okay, so they asked, who's more in it for the red carpet than a relationship? So Arabella and Joe said Georgia S and Toby. And Arabella and Georgia S got into it because at the end of the day, Arabella's saying that Georgia S created all this drama and and Georgia S turns around and says, well, I didn't want to create drama, but you did. You did. That's going to be stuck to you like motherfucking glue from now on. That piece of shit will be stuck to you like glue from now on. So you might as well learn to fish good bait, deal with it, let it go over your head, or you're going to forever be but back at people every time they mention it. Callum and Jess said Georgia S and Toby as well. They were saying the same old excuse that they didn't make it work on the outside. And to be fair, Georgia S is right. Toby was not in the vicinity or the hemisphere of where Georgia S was for them to work it out on the outside. They were millions of miles apart from each other. How is she expected to make that work? So them saying they didn't make it work on the outside makes no sense to me, because at the end of the day, the same would apply for Callum and Molly. They didn't make it work on the outside, but yet they're in there. Yes, they did. They have more history than everybody else in there, but they still didn't make it work on the outside. They made it work for 3 years, and then after that, it was done. But yet they still found themselves back in there. So what would that say about them? Do you know what I mean? Pot calling kettle black. Molly and Tom said Joe and Arabella. Even Casey said Toby and Georgia S. Again, not working on the outside situation, which I think is bullcrap. And this is why Georgia S needs to stop biting at everything that everybody says, because not everything needs an answer. That's why half the time Toby is quiet. As Kaz says, you need to pick your battles. You need to pick your battles, not keep throwing hands down every time someone opens their mouth, because they're obviously going to say something that you don't like and is going to get your back up. Because as the saying goes, hit dogs will holler, and Georgia S needs to stop hollering so loud, like seriously. Georgia H and Anton picked Joe and Arabella. Chris and Joanna picked Joe and Arabella. Georgia S and Toby picked Joe and Arabella. And Josh and Sophie picked Joe and Arabella. So across the board, it was literally Joe and Arabella. Some Georgia S's and Toby's, but the main thing was Joe and Arabella. So the next one was, which couple has the least sexual chemistry? Now, me myself, I would have picked Georgia H and Anton. I would have picked Georgia H and Anton. That's what I would pick, because they literally do have the least sexual chemistry going. Because Anton is doing the motherfucking mostest right now, like the mostest. So Georgia H literally turns to Anton and says, let's ruin their day. And I knew the only people that they were pissed with Chris and Joanna. And I thought, okay, is that how you're going to do your girl though? Joanna's meant to be your girl. Is that how you're going to do your girl? But okay. So Molly and Tom, Chris and Joanna, Casey and Eve, they picked Georgia H and Anton. And I said, I would fully agree. Georgia H didn't like it, and her reasoning why she didn't like it was full of shit. When Casey said, at the end of the day, if someone gives me the ick, I will find it hard to go back there to try and reverse that. And that's true. How can you literally be with someone who gives you the motherfucking ick? But, Georgia H is trying to spin it like a good old spin doctor at the end of the day. So then it went off from there, and Anton and Georgia H picked Chris and Joanna. And basically I knew that was a cop-out, because we knew it was coming. And Joanna just turned around and says, well, there's newer couples in here that you could have picked. You didn't essentially have to pick me and Chris, but you did because of the situation that we're going through right now. But Joanna needs to be careful in what she says to people, because she can't in one breath say she's got sexual chemistry with Chris, then in the next breath say they're not compatible. That makes no sense. It makes no sense. And this is why I'm saying some of these people say things without actually thinking about what the frick it is they're saying, and not actually storing what they've said in their brain to people. Anyway, we shall move on. So Joanna and Chris picked Casey and Eve. Toby and Georgia S picked Georgia H and Anton. I really believe that Georgia H is trying to convince herself that Anton is the one. That Anton really is the one, and it's not there. and it's not there. And now I think they're literally sitting there uncomfortable because Anton looked like he started to get more irate as the game went on, when people were picking him and Georgia H in terms of sexual chemistry, and I think another one as well. Because people are seeing what they are not seeing, and they don't like it. They don't like the truth being displayed in their face at all. So then it came to Josh and Sophie, who said Chris and Joanna. Arabella and Joe said Callum and Jess. And Callum and Jess said Joanna and Chris. So the next one was, which couple is the most one-sided? Again, I would have said Georgia H and Anton. Because, as again, Anton does the most decent, Georgia H just laps it up. She just laps it up because she's never had no one do that for her. So that's the reason why I would say Georgia H and Anton. Toby and Georgia S went Chris and Joanna. And I'm like, yes, Joanna, they see you, because Chris was doing the most with you too, and you just literally pushed him away. Josh and Sophie said Georgia H and Anton. Arabella and Joe said Chris and Joanna. And Arabella said because she felt that Chris was more affectionate. And Chris shot back with, Joe is a slow burner and you would know this because she is your mate. I says, yeah. Arabella didn't like that one. He just slapped that right back in her face. Arabella did not like that in the slightest. And that kind of showed that Arabella, when it comes to Chris, doesn't necessarily have true intentions. So Molly and Tom went Chris and Joanna. Casey and Eve went Chris and Joanna. But Chris was kind of right when in his VC, he turned around and said it wasn't necessarily aimed at him, but more so aimed at Joanna. And I'm like, it's right though. It's right. So Jess and Callum picked Chris and Joanna, and Joanna started crying. I'm like, what are you crying for, my girl? Why the fuck are you crying for? And she's like, I don't like this game. And I'm like, don't be so ridiculous. Like, really, don't be so ridiculous. Because at the end of the day, there is a clip, yeah, where I can't remember which episode it was, but Chris leaned in and they were in the kitchen with other people to try and kiss her. I think it was after the speech. Yeah, that was it. It was after the speech, after the fire pit they give to couple up with her. And he was leaning, wanting kiss, and she just leant all the way back and was like, what? She was like, no, I'm tired. And then when they get in the room, I'm tired. I don't want to talk. I've got a headache. And then tried to sleep sitting up. It's things like that. It's things like that, my girl. This man was trying with you and you decided that, you know what, I'm finna him. You decided that you two were not compatible all over his speech. That's what she did, all over his speech. So I don't know why she fi crying now. She crying over spilt milk. I don't know why she fi crying now. She should have kept them tears on the back burner, because she the one showing her hand to everybody. She the one going around the place chatting this man. Yeah, and making it seem like she not like him at all. But then one fi cry when she call out on it. Anyway. So Anton and Georgia H, of course, picked Chris and Joanna. She's still crying. So Chris piped up and was defending Joanna. And Anton was getting pissed because he turned around and him said, he's piping up too much. He's fucking pissing me off, to be honest. And I was like, well, who rattled your cage, mate? Who rattled Anton's cage? Do you know what I mean? Man started to get brazen up in these motherfucking streets. And you want to know why that was? It was because the truth of what people saw with him and Georgia H's relationship was slapping him in the face, and he didn't like it, because that man was trying too hard when he knew this woman no want him, when he knew Georgia H no want him, when he knew Georgia H kept throwing him over for the next fucking idiot that came in, to be fair. To end that off, Joanna and Chris then picks Anton and Georgia H. So basically it's because Anton's been giving her all the attention while Georgia H takes it. So Georgia H literally does this whole spiel and then turns around and says, well, Anton stepped up to the plate. And I'm like, my girl, Anton's always been stepping up to the plate. You've just been ignoring him for this long, yeah? And because you have nobody else in which to pair off with in that place, you now want Anton at the end of the day. So now she's literally turning to Anton and telling Anton how he should think. And I'm like, it's because he beat the fuck out of you, Georgia H, to get you to where you needed to be. And I don't even think you're there. I think you're just playing in this man's face, to be fair. The next one is, which couple is the least honest with their feelings? So Chris and Joanna picked Josh and Sophie. Georgia S and Toby picked Joe and Arabella. The side eye was strong when they picked Joe and Arabella. Arabella's side eye was side-eyeing, bombastic side-eyeing. So then Sophie and Josh picked Georgia S and Toby. Arabella and Joe picked Georgia S and Toby, and basically brought up the fact that she believed that they wanted each other in the first place, but literally made their feelings a secret until they ended up hurting other people within the place. And I ain't gonna say nothing on that, because all of you know what I already think about the Georgia S and Toby situation. All of you know she waited that man out. That's the only thing that I can think of, to be fair. But Molly and Tom picked Georgia S and Toby. Callum and Jess picked Georgia S and Toby. Casey and Eve picked Joe and Arabella. Georgia H and Anton picked Josh and Sophie. So then it went on, which couple is the least compatible? So Joanna turned around and threw her dummy out of the pram, basically, and said, you all might as well just write us down, because she can't be asked with it anymore. Just like, really, my girl, really, like, suck it in, like, suck it up and suck it in, like, seriously. So Georgia H and Anton are gonna go for Chris and Joanna, because Anton just went for Chris at the end of the day. Them two just had words with each other. Georgia H did turn around to him and say, it's all him. This is all him. He can write it down, basically. She was not having anything to do with that decision, so she put it on him, so it was okay. So in comes Maya, and then that's when everybody starts shitting themselves, because they're like, okay, we've just wrote these names down on this plaque. What the hell is going to happen now? So basically Maya explains what's going to happen next. She says that the names that they've written down, she wants them individually to read out the names that are written down on the plaque. Now everybody, you could see when everybody, and the coin dropped with everybody, and they started to regret their decision. And the only one that piped up to say she really regretted her decision was Georgia H. And it's the fact that this is where it was at this point that she turned around and said, well, I did say that the decision was all his. Anton looked at her as if to say, the fuck? And she looked back at him and says, well, didn't I say that? And he says, well, yeah, you did. But Jesus, you just fucking sold me down a Swanee for 10 pieces of motherfucking silver, my girl. Are you a rotted pirate? Like, honestly, is she a rod? She was like, take him. I will talk. I was like, wow. What? And that shows you who Georgia H is. And in that, you see Anton literally move away from her. So Maya asked Anton if he was okay, and he went, yeah, but he stands by his decision. So I'm like, so okay, if these people are now regretting their decision because Maya come in, because now you kind of realize that the people you write down might be kicked from the island, then that means you weren't playing that game truthfully in the slightest, was ya? You really wasn't. Only some people were playing that game truthfully. So Georgia S and Toby, they'd picked Casey and Eve. Joanna and Chris had picked Joe and Arabella. Georgia H and Anton had picked Chris and Joanna. And Casey and Eve had picked Chris and Joanna. Everybody was like, yeah, nah. They really didn't want to say it. Molly and Tom picked Callum and Jess. Jess and Callum picked Joe and Arabella. Arabella and Joe picked Casey and Eve. And Sophie and Josh picked Arabella and Joe. So the couples that had to go and stand next to Maya after their names had been read out was Joanna and Chris, Eve and Casey, Arabella and Joe, and Callum and Jess. Those couples were now vulnerable, and each of the islanders now have to choose one girl and one boy to be dumped from the island immediately. Everybody was like, shit, who do they pick? Who do they fucking pick? Who do they pick? Me, myself, I'll probably go for Joanna, for the girl. Probably go for Joanna for the girl. I don't know. And probably Chris. That's the only two I could see going. That is the only two I could see going, because the other ones have just come in. To be fair, Casey, well, not Casey, Eve has just come in. Jess has just come in. The only other long-standing people there is Casey, Arabella, Chris, Joanna, and Callum. Oh, and Joe has just come in. I think after the bullshit that just went down, I think it's going to be Joanna and Chris that go, to be fair. I think it's going to be Joanna and Chris. Arabella thinks she's going, but I don't think she will. I really don't think she will. I think it's really going to be Chris and Joanna. And that will be because of Joanna, to be fair. Anyway, that's where it ended. I'm rambling now. I'm rambling. So I will be back in quick succession with the next episode once I watch it tonight. As I always say, my renegades, thank you so much for all those that subscribe and joining my little renegade army. I love you all. As I always say, please hit that subscribe button. Please hit that notification button so you know I'm going to do videos. And I'll speak to you all again soon. Peace out.